Path of Exile 2 has various quests throughout the main campaign before you get into the endgame that give you permanent buffs to your character. These can be easily missed, and a lot of them are purely optional quests. Don't get me wrong, you should have quest markers on the right hand side for them, however they can be missed still. Today I will guide you through where those permanent buffs are, how to find them, and how to make sure that you complete them. In the interest of not giving any spoilers out, I will leave time codes for each of the acts in the game. First things first, it's worth understanding the map shows all quests that give a permanent buff, with a small plus next to them. Look here into Act 1 as an example, and you can see one of the first ones here with this plus. So if you click on this little icon up in the top left or hover over it, you can actually see what the various different icons mean. There's a legend here for you, and the boss encounters with an upgrade show with a plus. What it doesn't say there is that there are various quests that have a plus on them as well. Let me just show you an example of that. Is this loot here for Una's hut. This symbol isn't even shown in this legend, but has a plus on it. So don't miss out. Don't just look for the skulls with a plus. These symbols will be grayed out if they're completed, and they will be highlighted if they still need to be completed. Before getting into Act 1, let me just quickly run through all the potential buffs that you can encounter. There's plus 20 to all elemental resistance, lightning, cold and fire, 24 weapon set skill points, plus 100 max spirit, plus 20 max life, and plus 8% increased maximum life. There are some additional choice ones, but we'll go into those as we come to them, because there are various choices which can affect your character in different ways, and it's up to you what you choose, but they are permanent and locked in. They can't be changed. For the purposes of this video, I will be calling the cruel acts 1 to 3, act 4 to 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But let's get started. Let's start off with Act 1 and 4. The first of these permanent buffs that you're going to come across is Byra of the Rotten Pack. She can be found here in Clearfell. Now, she's an optional boss that you can go after. She's fairly difficult to miss, if I'm honest, but she does give you a plus 10% cold resists. If you have them, use fire abilities when you're fighting her, because she has a bit of a weakness to fire damage. She's fairly cold based, hence getting the bonus to cold resistance. Now, I said this is Act 1 and 4. You can get this bonus twice, so you can get it in Act 1 and in Act 4. Just going to stop the video very quickly here to say, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on those notification bells. I'm going to be that YouTuber that says only 21% of you that are watching these videos are subscribed at the moment. I really appreciate your love and support. My last video, the 10 tips to Path of Exile 2, did really well, had over 2,500 views in the first couple of days, and it really meant a lot. I appreciate anyone that hits that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscribers by the end of next year. That is my goal. I want to be able to spend a bit more time with my kids and be able to take an extra day off a week. That's my aim. Sorry. The second permanent buff that you're going to come across is Crowbell. It's actually quite a while between the first one and the second one, so you're going to have to go through all of this around the right hand side. Granted, your map might look slightly different in terms of how it's laid out. It's a while before you find the Crowbell in the hunting grounds. Again, another optional boss, and this one gives you 2 weapon set passive skill points. This is the first time that you're introduced to the weapon set skill points, and again, you can get 2 in Act 1 and 2 in Act 4. This particular boss, you are going to want to try and stay away from its large overhead AoE slamming attack. It can do a fair bit of damage, but I think by the time you get to this first boss, normally you're strong enough to deal with this. You know how to dodge, but my genuine advice would be to go for a ranged attack with this. The third of these permanent buffs that you're likely to come across is the King of the Mists. Now, he is found in Freythorn. This is the area of the map that you're up in the trees, in the rafters, and you need to destroy multiple different rituals in order to unlock it. I will say I think this boss is one of the harder ones in the early game because of its high stun threshold. However, with the right elemental attacks, you shouldn't find it too difficult. You can always come back to this one later if you need to. This does give you one of the more important buffs though, with plus 30 spirit, which gives you access immediately to be able to use some form of aura or eventually the meta gems. Meta gems being any of those abilities that trigger another skill, such as cast on freeze, cast on shock, cast on crit. The other big thing worth noting about the King of the Mists is this one is only available in Act 1. When you defeat him in Act 4, you do not get 30 more spirit. It's one of the few permanent buffs that is only available the first time you encounter it. On to number 4. Una's Hut, the fourth of these permanent buffs that you're going to come across, is found in Ogham's farmland. This is the aforementioned loot symbol that you can see here. In this area, you're going to need to find a building, normally towards the middle of the map. It's not normally on the outskirts of it. In the center of the map, there will be a building you have to go into, find the loot item. There'll be some rare mobs in there, most likely, and take it back to Una in the Clearfell encampment. She will give you 2 more weapon set passive skill points, and this again can be done twice, both in Act 1 and in Act 4. It's a fairly straightforward one, but could be quite easy to miss. Fifth and final permanent buff in Act 1 and 4 is Candlemas the Living Rite. This can be found in the Ogham Manor. However, you will notice there isn't a symbol around the Ogham Manor, and that is because there is a second layer of the map once you click into the Ogham Manor to find the symbol with the plus. So this one can be easily missed if you're rushing to that end boss. It's found on one of the various levels of the Ogham Manor on your route to the final boss of Act 1, and it does give you a plus 20 to maximum life in Act 1, but in Act 4 it gives you 8% increased maximum life. It's one that you definitely don't want to miss because it's going to stack your life, which you're definitely going to want going into the end game. During the fight itself, Candlemas will fire a lot of fire-based projectiles at you. It has a heavy AoE attack, which if you get caught out can do you a fair amount of damage. Either have resistances ready, or maybe make sure that you equip a charm to give you some fire resistance to help you with this fight. It's a good little test before going into the final boss. Now, let's move into Act 2 and 5. The first of which, number 6 in terms of the total amount of permanent buffs, is Kabbalah Constrictor Queen, which can be found in Keth. This is another optional boss that gives 2 weapon set passive skill points, both 2 now and 2 in Act 5. This fight is fought in a very small area. Be prepared to dodge a lot, but don't be afraid to leave the area just to kill the additional mobs that spawn and then return to the area to carry on the fight against the boss. The boss may have some of its stun or regenerate any energy shield during that time that you leave the area to kill the mobs and return. However, you won't die. So my heavy recommendation if you're struggling with AoE to deal with those mobs is to just leave the area, kill the mobs and return. The 7th permanent buff that you're going to come across is in the Valley of the Titans, or kind of. What you actually need to do for this one is go to 2 different locations in order to get a relic. The first of which is the Kabbalah Clan Relic, which you will find in Keth. This drops from any of the mobs that look like serpents, essentially. The second is the Sun Clan Relic, dropped from monsters in the Bone Pits up here. Once you have these 2 pieces, you're going to go to the Valley of the Titans. Hopefully you will have already discovered the area that you need to insert these into. You insert the 2 pieces of the relic and you then get a choice. You can choose between 30% increased charm charges and 15% increased mana recovery from flasks. It is worth noting though, you do get this choice again in Act 5, so you could have up to 60% increased charm charges and up to 30% increased mana recovery from flasks, or a combination of the 2. It's up to you. All you have to do is go back there and choose it again in order to change it. My only advice with this particular one is when you are first exploring the Valley of Titans, make sure that you get that checkpoint near the location where the relics are. You don't want to get caught short by finding the area to put the relics in, but you didn't hit the checkpoint. The 8th permanent buff that you're going to come across is the Final Letter in Deshar. That can be seen with this logo here, this little scroll-like logo, which again gives 2 more weapon points. This is a fairly straightforward one. You've simply got to make sure that you fully explore Deshar and find the dead body in order to get the item and take it back to camp. Straightforward enough. The 9th permanent buff that you're going to come across is the Sisters of the Garukan Shrine. Now this is the easiest one to miss. So you can see it on the map here. Very faintly you can see that there is a plus, however it's very difficult to see for a start. Now this one gives you 10% increased lightning resistance, so it is very important. What you actually need to do here is find this particular shrine up in the spires of Deshar and click on this statue. When you do, all the nearby statues will attack you, and all the nearby statues throughout the rest of this region will attack you. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you'll be able to deal with those additional mobs. However, this is so easy to miss because it doesn't really prompt you to click on this statue. This is another one of those permanent buffs that you can get in both Act 2 and Act 5, so there's a potential plus 20 to lightning resistance. Don't miss this one, the easiest to miss of all. Now let's move into Act 3 and 6. The first of these permanent buffs that you're going to come across in this Act, number 10, is Mighty Silverfist. This guy hits like a truck. He's found in the jungle ruins, and I would say he's the first proper test that you have in Act 3. Don't get me wrong, there are bosses in a previous area in the sand-swept marsh on your way to camp. However, this guy hits hard. He's basically a big gorilla with 4 arms, and he will swing his mighty concrete pillar at you and smash you into oblivion. Now, if you're prepared for this guy, he's not as hard as I'm making out. You just need to fight from a distance, know when to attack, and don't be impatient. He gives you 2 weapon sets passive skill points, both in Act 3 and in Act 6. He's just a great fight, to be honest, so he's a fun one to go after. Permanent buff number 11 is Ignakdug, however you pronounce it, the Bog Witch. Now, you can find her in the Azak Bog up here, and is an optional boss. But this one, you're going to want to make sure you find, because you get plus 30 spirit in Act 3, and you get plus 40 spirit in Act 6. The fight itself isn't that difficult, in my opinion. She moves around very quickly, but is easy enough to kill once she stops moving. You can kind of trip her up if you hit her while she's moving, which stops her very briefly so that you can get a few hits in. Permanent buff number 12 is the Venom Draft. Now, you can find this in the Venom crypts. What you need to find is a vial of venom and give it to Survey back in the camp. You get a choice in Act 3 of 25% increased stun threshold, 30% increased elemental alignment threshold, or 25% increased mana regeneration rate. It is up to you which you choose, but make sure you choose carefully because you cannot change this at all. Once you get into Act 6, you get another choice. Now in Act 6, it is 10% chaos resistance, plus 5 to all attributes, or plus 15% reduction in slowing potency debuffs. I highly recommend going for that plus 10% chaos resistance because at no other point are you going to get that option, and it's just a huge buff. So truly consider that as an option when you make your way through. Permanent buff number 13 is Blackjaw the Remnant. This is another one that doesn't show up on the initial overlay map. You need to click into Jaquani's Sanctum. When you click into there, you will find an area that has the Blackjaw Remnant. Now this particular boss gives you plus 10% fire resistance both in Act 3 and Act 6 for a total of plus 20%. Watch out for this guy's slam as it reaches way further than you think. This one actually took me a little while for some reason when I was fighting it the first time until I made a couple of changes to my build and then I destroyed him. He's an optional boss, don't miss him. Number 14, the final permanent buff, is the Blood Sacrifice in the Agarat. You can see this here within the temple towards the end of the game. All you need to do is find the sacrificial heart that will drop off a random monster in the Agarat and put it into the altar to sacrifice. Now, the altar itself is normally in the north part of the map. Obviously, where that drops, it's going to be completely random. You're going to need to continue to kill mobs until you find it. I think they've balanced it fairly well that it drops quite early as you're killing enemies in this area, but it's a pretty dangerous area as things go because it's towards the end of Act 3 or the end of the game. Now, This gives 2 weapon set passive skill points for both Act 3 and Act 6. And as I've said, it's a pretty dangerous area, so just be careful as you go. This one is shown on the map by the question mark with a plus because it isn't actually a boss, it's simply sacrificing on the altar. So that's it, a complete guide to all of the permanent buffs in the main campaign before you get into that end game, and make sure you're prepared. If you've enjoyed this, please drop a like, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bells. I'm going to be doing a lot more Path of Exile content. My next video, I probably plan to do a little graphical guide to help people that are struggling with frames. My aim is by this time next year to get to those 1,000 subscribers and start working my way to be able to take an additional day off work so I can spend more time with my children. So it's very much appreciated if you can hit that sub button. Watch out for my next video, and if you need a guide to all things Path of Exile 2 and some more tips, here's another video I've done that shows 10 key tips that should help you out even further. I'm JammyGiraffe, thank you for all the love and support, send in positivity as always, Jammy